Well, that's good to hear. So it's time. Good morning. So, yeah. So we're making progress. I want you to read the course with fairly good level of confidence that you can entertain an interview for a job in wildlife ecology, wildlife management, and have the vocabulary to at least be familiar with the main goal. In terms of understanding, I'm going to say that so far that I've seen more, I would say that you guys have a very good understanding of what the issues at stake. So good discernment between conservation cases, EFP cases, pure management, eradication, and so on. And it's never easy. Each species has its own challenges. It's easy to say, oh, it's commensal. Does it mean every species, commensal species is exactly the same? So we're just opening a can of worms at this course, basically, just to get I keep calling it an eye opener. So far we've covered the animals pretty much. I'm going to give you, I know we were already at somewhere like 32 here. So that includes wildlife management, correct? So we're discussing species and their management as well, right? So there's the wildlife and there's the management, and then there's the combination of both. So it's never an easy story every time, and that's what you've been doing during your orals. Nobody can talk about I don't know, goby, the round goby, and not describe the biodiversity species, because in the end, you want to know if it's too few, too many, and what kind of fraction out of it too. So definitely you have to set the basis. So wildlife management is the same story. So that's why you get paid a good salary for doing wildlife management. You need to know your wildlife, and you need to know a bit of the management as well. For example, when I say management is, I'm going to call it, to be pragmatic, I'm going to call it solutions to an issue, other reintroductions, and so on, all those terms that you've seen so far. So none of those are really hard to understand, right? So this is why I can go multiple, and it's always a repeat. Cheetah where versus koala, and so on. There's, of course, the same terms that come over and over again. The challenge is about multiple species. What did we say for fish? 80,000 species. For amphibians and reptiles, the sort of we're going to say conservation issues. So very few species, very small populations. Generally speaking, respect. Birds can be a nuisance. Bird can be a pure conservation, such as the maybe somebody was on Zoom yesterday talking about a hurricane falcon, maybe. So all kinds, 8,000 species. Hello, from the ostrich all the way to great blue heron. So as far as I'm concerned, that's where I'm interested. That's why I'm willing to get into management, because I don't like humans that much. I have to deal with dairy. I still do, and that's an excuse for another coffee. Sit down with some individual, whether a hunter, trapper, and discuss all kinds of issues. And the next neighbor, another coffee, will have a different story, different angle on the whole story. So in the end, you remember that public opinion is a driving force in management. You understand that? I hope so. Public opinion makes the difference because it's whether Justin will get into the Liberal Party will get in. And so if you're not happy with the last 4 years of management, wildlife management, for example, yes, it was in pretty sure it was the provincial Ontario government that decided to slash in conservation programs, so they closed down all kinds of lake study centers. Thing is, you can't study one lake and try to understand what's happening with the lake, so you need multitudes. Agree, of course, with the Valley Living with Lake Center. This goes always, this goes from closing, this goes from closing all the time. There's no full-fledged support saying, it's not like MOE, Ministry of the Environment, they're guaranteed to be have work the next day, but they don't do the research part. So study centers, that's for conservation. Because if you got time to studies, because I mean you have to deal with a small populations, and you're trying to conserve those species. So a little harder to finance, basically. It's easier to get the ministry to react if you say, I got 3 black bears sleeping under my deck. Right? And if you say, I got a raccoon there, would you live at downtown Toronto? Too bad. We're not going for a raccoon. My buddy in Sherbrooke, Quebec had a problem with raccoons, and I probably told that story all over again, but he didn't want to kill it, it was sacrifice. Yeah, did that once, but I mean, it's too many raccoons. So he asked around. Neighbors said no. Nobody wanted the raccoon, so he went to a park. And the park didn't want the raccoon either. So, problems. Okay, so let me move forward in this this file here. So it's sort of a 2-part. This one's about overview of wildlife management cases, and then we're going to see 12 papers I extracted from the Journal of Wildlife Management. For lack of better choice, you now know from your literature reviews that there's more than that journal. The thing is, because Leopold from Wisconsin created the rules for wildlife management, the U.S. always meant to be the biggest, and they're at the forefront. They got more money for doing that kind of stuff than Chinese government. And Chinese government was very didn't offer very much help for saving the time. On the other hand, we claim to be good conservationists in North America. We're just a little brother of whatever USA is doing. They got better radio collars, they got better GIS, they got better drives, clouds, they got more satellites, so they get more information. Information goes to a USA satellite. If you buy a subscription for data, like sat data, you're gonna pay to the US. But anyhow, we have the natural resources, which they don't. So they're stuck with different problems. The YouTube videos will show you whatever is American has to do. Gators, I guess, or wild boars. Very diverse. California is extremely diverse. The ocean, and they got the mountains. So in Canada, we have a whole bunch of fur bearers, each with their own biology, but there's a common rule here, and that's very basic for the exam white. We drop in the fall because we want the best fur, so that just makes sense. It's very basic. It's still very important. If a journalist hears tomorrow somebody selling spring fur, the whole industry is going down because they lose the trust in the fall. In the fall, And that's true for the beaver. So different targets, I call them quotas. I think we've seen this term somewhere in here. For example, right here, line 5, quotas and the limit, just again, technical term, sets a limit to the number of animals that can be taken. Here's a funny story, and you need that for the final, because we're getting to a bit more details, because I know that stuff a little better, and you're in the subgroup, so welcome to that club. We're not talking shark here. So, so the funny story is the trapper has a quota, and he's gonna set some traps. And as much as possible, we're supposed to be the world experts in trapping, correct? Because this is where it's been happening. Before that, the US eradicated a couple of species, controlled their coyote with pan traps, they call them, and so on. I never wanted to make the labs, by the way, or the techniques themselves, because I mean, there's 3 credit courses at Boreal where you can do GIS the whole semester or do techniques for the field. So I hope that if you go for an interview for Boston, being a technician, I don't see you guys setting traps tomorrow. That's certainly something that would be very easy. They're making labs just to show you what a trap looks like. Not everybody's comfortable with that. So that departs from Dr. Mallo's approach, because he's more traditional. That's always been things like your conveyor trap, conveyor 220, conveyor 120. For beaver, it's conveyor 330 because it's a larger animal. And all that denomination is found at the fur auction house. Question for the final word down. Anybody? It's known all around the U.S. We're selling fur in March, April. No, sorry, more like June probably. Before they collecting all the furs, sorting the furs in batches. Where is it? Anybody? Yeah, no. Oh my God. All the good answers they're not sitting here. North Bay. So we're half away from one of the remnants of the Hudson Bay Company that started dealing with the First Nations in order to get the gold from this area. The gold was, what was it again? Good answer at the exam. Beaver number 1. In volume, in fur quality, that's all combined. So the abundance, I'm gonna say almost infinite resource, because this is a rodent that multiplies very quickly, very adaptable animal. So this is all good for the final as well. I'm getting into very specific. This animal has everybody has a good reason to get rid of a beaver for some reason. I know that you know, if you're canoeing at night, it's nice to have one around, but trust me, it will be around. Nobody was able to get rid of all beavers. Locally, like in Chelmsford, can control beavers because your culverts are getting clogged all the time. But come back to this over and over. Every part of North America has to control the beaver. Right? So a very large animal that you know, I don't have to go through the biology, but it's moving stuff around. Moving tons of dirt, 2 tons of branches. Not every animal does that. A wolf doesn't do that much. So it's an engineer. That's why we say it's an engineer, because it's moving all kinds of materials. It migrates. It's solitary, and it can be territorial, but in a family territory. territory, so extremely complex, and that explains our strategy. Give it food. You put one beaver where there's favorite food. Anybody for beaver quickly? Local tree. Birch. Good answer. Birch. Try to all some fur, get all the gummy on their feet, and go grab it for some birch poplar. Creates its own food resources, isn't that crazy? So if they can't get to the birch up the line, as a Jared, we're getting that down 1 foot higher so that the water gets me to that birch. Cool. They kill the shoreline by flooding, right? So if you have unless you have full cedars, it will cut the walls. It would. But they will destroy the natural shoreline, and it's good. Then they're going to abandon the pond for 5-10 years, possibly come back again, and it's full birch again. So birch is a colonizing species, the species that comes after disturbance very quickly, right? So, and beavers know that. They didn't take the course, but they know their stuff. This animal is being trapped during the first season, because ethically, ethics is a good word for this class, because we're dealing with humans all the time. You have to be responsible for what you're doing in your action on wildlife. So to be ethical, you can't trap it any other way unless it's officially declared and identified as a nuisance. In other words, we got an emergency, this was getting flooded, call in the trap. That animal is clearly sacrificed. Otherwise, the sheer volume of fur is trapped in the fall. Here's so long little break here. I was talking about a funny story. So your trapper wants to get links because links brings in more money. Right here. So allow he has to get beaver. So basically, that's the way the ministry puts pressure on the beaver is for the trappers to get to the beavers first. In other words, they are not allowed claiming a fur going to the fur auction and say, here's my links until they see that the trapper had a quota of 12 beavers and caught 12 beavers. I didn't see a rat. Hey, I'm saying go with your quota. So the ministry knows that your township holds 12 beavers. Sustainable, correct? 12 beavers sustainable, so maybe it's half of the population according to the. Yeah, that's right. I mean, let's say French maximum sustainable yield. We've seen last class, which is half the carrying capacity according to the classic model. 50% of the carrying capacity. So halfway. That's the idea. That's the idea. The idea to hit the recruits, all kinds of the little beavers. The trapper is always happy to find a young one because it's easier to carry 60-pound beavers quite a bit of meat. So a smaller beaver, check. I've got one of my 12. One of my 12, they don't have to hit the senior of the pond. They just want to get the recruits, the cohort. The recruitment. So lots of juveniles, hopefully in the harvest, and it's always a good sign. If your trapper has 5 days to catch and he's got 10 traps and sees 3/4 are juveniles, guess what? Of course, unfortunately, animals have to be sacrificed, but it means that they're popular. Better. And meanwhile, you're leaving your animals quiet because your child is busy with younger animals. So a little longer story on this beaver. So you see how finicky the trapping can get. There's definitely a time for trapping, and you don't want to be reporting all kinds of animals because you're just treats the juvenile to adult ratio as important in this group. So it is managed, and again, as I said, this is not eradication, it's not 100%. This is not what the ministry is after. The ministry says you can open it for beavers, I'll ask you to take 12 areas. All right. Not that simple because these animals move and your waterways go from one township to the next. So suddenly what the trap line next door is doing, it makes a difference on your own trap line, right? If upstream somebody is taking the beaver, you're both taking beavers. So that's more of the landscape ecology. Ministry does its best. So it's got a record, for the district of Sudbury. 30 townships, 30 trappers, 30 names. They visit, their truck, they go out to camps and they visit each one of them and say, how's it going? Any beer in the truck? No. Yeah, no. So very finicky adjustment of the fur trapping. So more pressure on the beaver. The muskrat, about the same thing. Another rodent, so another, did I say the word prolific? The word for the exact. Our strategy, same story. Very opportunistic, that means that if they see that there's still competition, they make babies. They can feed well, and like that. There's the muskrat. Not a big story for the north, although First Nations have used muskrat throughout. Beautiful little fur, not very big. But in the south, it's population control. Around the St. Lawrence Seaway, it's all plains, it's all flooding areas next. So you could imagine marshes. So if you have marsh, you have muskrat, they come into the houses that are like this. Population control on muskrat. Quotas must be removed near Montreal, whereas around here they're moderate. Where I go, Trapland, where I go, north of Sudbury, say behind Gabriel. If there's a quota of 3 muskrat, it's a good day. So very few. Beaver is reasonable. It really depends on how much water. Your trapland has no water, you don't know beaver. So that's adjusted. Foxes, I'm not too sure about the quotas, but again, if I have to trap tomorrow, I know I have to get in my boat, I have to get on the water, I have to put traps for a beaver, and then I will get to the other species. Very finicky, especially the dogs are not, one thing that helps the dogs in general, the fact that they're just smart, especially compared to my group. My group right here, not the killer, weasels. Not dumb, but very proactive. That means they're not shy, they're not afraid of anybody. Weasel climb over you and on your sleeping bed at night. Same for the mink, very bold. The martin's a little more shy. The otter is playful, so it'll come and visit. It doesn't mind if you're on the trail somewhere. Fisher is all over the place, so the inquisitive animal. That's an animal that just wants to put its nose where it's tight. You try that. So that's terminology. You hate all the time. Other people that human ones. But your fisher does that. The wolverine is a different story just because it's not very open. I mean, Ontario gets about 6 furs every year on a good year. 0 on the bad year. So they're all coming from Manitoba. So technically we don't have a population. The First Nations have the right to trap and they stop the wolverine at the border, if you like, just to make a quick story. So these animals are not very The pressure is not high because they're very hard to catch. I see, I took the first course to see how it's being done by a professional. And this guy set up 2 years ahead of time. So that means that every 6 months he would get a carcass and bury the carcass, and that's what's going to, the rotting flesh is going to attract the wolf. And they have to visit the site, the wolves have to visit the site for about a year before they will be comfortable. With a wildlife camera, you'll see the animal jaws being extremely wary, extremely difficult. Coyote a little bolder. I'm gonna say dumber. So yeah. But there are few in the park, so not a big story. Of course, you're in Texas, different story. We know that, right? Coyote will be first thing before coffee is trying to get rid of the 6 coyotes you've got in your poultry somewhere. Lynx, same story, a few in the park. So the pressure is not extremely high. I got a quick story on the bobcat. I've given you a dragon again to see how different species, different localities create a different management story. Michaela, can you hear me from there? Yeah. Okay. So the bobcat that I just learned that was 3 years ago. I got invited by a friend in Wisconsin, somebody I had talked to, a biologist. He worked with the Indian Commission. So he's a white guy working for the First Nations. Managed the state because for long, it's historical. Wisconsin has a large First Nations territory population. They're like this with the government. So the U.S. and the First Nation. So they manage together. They respect people. If they have to make a sweat tent at some point during the meeting, go right ahead. They make sure everybody's got their results. The bobcat. So the bobcat, this guy's a bobcat biologist. He said, let's work on diet and physical condition. He says the bobcat in the north end. I didn't know the story a little bit more because you worked on a bobcat already, but in Wisconsin, this is a very valuable fur, very valuable animal. So for hunters or trappers, this is a prize. But there's a lottery where your name is in the ballot only every 11 years. So you have, if you catch one animal, you have to wait at least 11 years, and don't ask me why it's not 12 hours. 11 years before they get a tag for another kill. Talk about strict regulation. That's one. I just said 11 years. I'd like to see the source. Why 11, not 12? Obviously, it's reduce the pressure. I think we understand. So, meanwhile, regardless of that very strict rule, I was able to go to Wisconsin, go to a place where they receive the bodies. We thought that morning we were, maybe 8 volunteers, 4 government, just like myself. 10 people with knives and crushers of all kinds and bags, lots of Ziploc bags. And we dismantled 500 animals in 4 hours. 500 animals. They were already all thawed, ready for animals with the head in one place, stomach in my lab, and so on. So that's a lot of harvest. So again, the rules are very important because it's a rule that's statewide. So you take your chances when you apply a rule like this. What if I made a mistake and 12 would have been necessary? Because everybody's at it on the state. So it's still a lot of animals being handled. At least 5, I would say probably, I would have to check the numbers again, maybe 800 a year. including that rule of 11 years rotation. So that's great. That's quite a treasure. Totally different story for the lynx. We have a different story. So we go per trap line. Out there in Wisconsin, they don't have trap lines because it's all fields and hedgerows, so different landscape altogether. So it's not like crown line. They cannot work with trap lines. Instead, they're free to go. 3-5 home, 1 bobcat. And of course, you remember they have to get the permission to get private property and so on, but they make deals. Go for a coffee, talk to Jerry at Timmy's, and say, I want to get Saturday morning, I'm going for your bobcat in here on your farm. So we've gone through this. I hate to show this to you because you might be under the impression this is a way to make a nice display. I'm showing you what not to do ever is show a 12-point font, lots of text. It'll be better next year for sure. So we've seen this already. And of course, the yellow is the jargon that needs to be brought to the final. I would say both. I hope to make these a little clearer. This is taken from an old paper. I wanted to make a book on asked me to represent Eastern Canada. And so all I did is a lit review and getting some databases from collaborators around Ontario and Quebec to update these maps. Unfortunately, yeah, they're not very clear, but quickly it goes all the way to 1997. See, dates already quite a bit. And this is just to see mink, marten, and fisher harvest and fur prices. Good answer. This graph represents fur harvest and fur prices across the years, all the way to from 1917 all the way to 1997, 80 years. So I thought it'd be important. It's a very basic paper, but it's still important to make people aware of where we stand for harvest. And you all seem to have some kind of a tendency. What strikes me, and I'm gonna show you some pointers. These right here represent the dollars right here. So the higher marks right here, this is Ontario right here for marten. In 87, peak of population, well, peak of harvest. So fancy. There are a lot of marten, but you can get only 50 cents a pound. Are you taking your quad out and changing axle and then oil change? And you pay for your oil change there. So it's always been known that if the fur price goes up, the demand, the pressure on the animal will be higher. Everybody gets that. If the animal's worth $1,000 tomorrow, everybody's out there. But they're all going traffic. That's what happened to. That's what happened in at some point. I think this right here represents Ontario dollars right here, and then there's Quebec dollars as well. And there was a time when the prices went crazy. This is also a time when we eradicated from Ontario the fisher. You can write this down. So fisher was eradicated in post-war, post-Second World War. Big concern. Fur price, good answer. Fur price. Just crazy. The demand was super high. Of course. The world got weird odd and say, what, you're killing animals for money? So they introduced a fur ban. Fur ban. So fur ban is just a decision that jurisdictions take, for example, France, Germany, or Great Britain, banning still some buyers, so the buyers are people who are behind in their fur position. They still value the fur as being extremely valuable, irreplaceable, unique, and so on. And if you have people asking for fur, you will get buyers, and that's, I'm gonna say Asia, just to keep it simple. So Asian come to North Bay every year, or zoo these days, and they buy lots of stock of a lot of A1 would be for prime beaver, for example, and A2 for them. All right. So right here, so there was a peak in price and there was a peak in harvest as well. So then the number dwindled. So dwindling is good. That's true for these today. So the prices are still extremely low, a fraction of what they were. That's what, whenever people say the collapse of the fur industries compared to this right here. So to give you just a rough idea quickly, and I'm not going to spend hours on this. The otter, for example, was worth $80 and is now worth $25. So of course, more recreational. People don't survive on fur, really. They don't wear fur. Right here, they sell fur. So helps the otter all the better. So from 80 to 25, I'm going to say the lynx is probably from 120 to $40. So a third of the price at best. Beaver is the sad part because we offer a lot of beaver. You can imagine that because the trapper, if he has only 1 week to trap and he has only time for his boat, he will bring only beaver because beaver wants to come first from his trap. Martin before you have on for a beaver. You can imagine her auction house in North Bay. The attic is covered with beaver. Just beaver. It's really deprived of not too much offer, little demand, so people send comes down to $8 a piece. Used to be 35 and now it's $8 a piece. So of course people see local think it's a real waste. It's unbelievable for that good quality. Eventually, one solution might be to develop the industry, the fur industry here, but there has to be a market. So public opinion will make a difference. All right. Fisher has gone up, so it was extirpated, nearly extirpated right here, and then a combination of things for Fisher. So the per price, and then right now also major logging. So after the Second World War, machinery got inside, got it on a very large scale. So modern logging. We're doing better, but there's no other avenue for us than to exploit the natural resources that we live from that. So one benefit from that forest is grows, so we cultivate, we culture, silviculture. Not the best, but no matter what, there's a demand for wood. It's all still a demand for wood, and that's not the cost. Therefore, we try to do rotation. 80-year rotation is about typical for the north. Different areas, different rotation time. 80 years for what we grow, and we grow. What do we grow around here in the forest around here? What do we grow after logging? It's a jackpine, good answer. Jackpine, write it down. Very important because it governs a lot of quotas. If it was logged, your trapline was logged. 10 years you're not catching anything, and then afterwards it's backfire. Suddenly you put a little change according to carrying capacity, right? And jackpot will not give you carrying capacity for almost nothing because it's a tree that's made to be collected like a straight, like two picks. There's no branch, there's no understory, there's no shrub layer. They're packed one after the other, and it's a desert. It's a desert. There's just nothing in jackpot. Hopefully, sometimes the wind will blow down go interior, and someday you get on the scout or on. So, did I say logging? Good answer. So fur price and logging had a lot to do. The fur prices remained down, so obviously the pressure on the fisher was less. The forest was growing again, so that now the fisher is picking up again to the point where, and then you right here sent me a video clip asking and could get among all the reasons right now more likely to see a fisher there. Crazy animal. They're very, very long tail, the length of the body, so it's like a sort of a dog cougar, smaller size. No. Very cool. So we got two patterns right here. The mink pressure, the harvest remain low, and then the marten has picked up again, but the prices have remained very low. And it's always something you're gonna have to face for sure. The cost of benefit. So I don't know if we've seen this already. A whole bunch. I see 23 lists right here. You can certainly bring a whole bunch at the exam. I'm gonna say possibly list 8 or 10 of these. Quite easy to remember, I'm sure. And you see my sources are extremely superficial. Again, this is the type of course where general information is available on the web. That's going to be got to discern what's say bullshit and what's not. And that's it. You was thinking about it. In terms of population control, I took the case of the coyote. I could have picked so many species. You know that already. It's hard to be a wildlife manager and not know the story behind the coyote for sure. So, and nothing too surprising because it's general knowledge by now. I just hope that's true. So right here, that sparked my interest right here. This statement right here that says Canada goose. You know, I'll know. Raise your hand if you don't know Canada goose. Very expensive. Very nice collar. I should have brought my. They've got a coyote collar available. So $750, you don't get the hood, but if you get the hood and the fur, you're at $1,000 $200 to get the tail of the coyote. By the way, very hard to beat that -32 when you're changing the battery of your truck. So all that time I bought fur. I'm very biased. I like fur. It's hard not to like fur. People live with full fur. I don't. And I know what I feel I know what I'm doing. Mind you, it's a matter of opinion. So I gotta be respectful of their opinions, but still, my approach to it is that if the bush is at carrying capacity, animals are sick, not necessarily, but they can be sick, they will get sick, they will get over carrying capacity and crash and so on. You've seen that already, right? So therefore, my excuse is to say, if I leave a population at 75% carrying capacity, isn't that a paradise? It's like going to a resort. There's 1,000 rooms and there's only 200 people in the swimming pool. God, to pick an analogy that might relate to. Remember those good days? Right? So below carrying capacity is not a bad concept. The idea is not to go below, what did I call it again? The maximum sustainable yield. So that's the chance you're taking when you take an animal, it could be that there's no backup. So you have to put numbers. Some animals are easy to count. For example, gulls on an island or Canada geese on an island. Your numbers are no standard deviation almost, like August, they probably between 21,500 and 20,000. The forest, not exactly the same story, like a little tricky. Like bear, even worse. Like bear, you take an animal and suddenly you just killed the cub as well because you took a sow. You just took down two animals because you went for one. So very tricky. You gotta watch definitely what you're doing. So all that time thinking, okay, we take coyote and then they put it in fur, and to me it's more useful around the collar, so I bought one. From Canadian. I might get stabbed if I was very careful of that. So watch yourself. So Canada Goose decided to save their company by saying that they're against fur. All right, they're not the first ones, they're not the last ones, and I respect that. But trapping will still prevail without nationwide action. So these people are saying that even though Canada Goose did the right thing, saving the coyote, they're saying that the U.S. government still calls. This is what we're talking about. Trapping will still prevail without nationwide action. The animal is under population control. How do you solve that issue? Anybody? Anybody's got a good solution? You can adopt a coyote, maybe, and make a pen in your backyard. This is a strange case for Sudbury because, I mean, raise your hand if you've seen a coyote around, anybody? So they're around, right? And this is just nothing compared to the density that you can find in the suburbs in the south. This is an American species. We're at the northern limit of coyote. I think timid's probably, if they have one these days, it's because of the last 10 years. The global warming. By the way, breaking news, I just heard that we just gained 40 days of snow-free days in the year. 40. From 145 to 185. That's a joke. So, your lynx is going to be sorry for himself. I can see that poor snowshoe hare trying to change for March 15. Where's the snow, Jerry? Where's the snow? Hasn't turned to white, hasn't turned to brown yet, and the snow's all gone. Not good. Coyotes are abundant. So this is the argument, the discussion that's ongoing. Everybody has their stand. You can't help that. But the Fur Institute of Canada just has something that was sort of not so political, just based on the facts. So coyotes are abundant in Canada. I can't dispute that. Provincial and territorial laws exist to regulate trapping and hunting. That means it's regulated. That means we're careful about it. Regulated harvest of coyotes provides economic, social, and cultural benefit. We know that. There's a need for wildlife control under government regulation to ensure human safety. Do you agree with that? Raise your hand if you agree that taking coyotes will increase safety. In other words, is coyote a dangerous animal? Yes or no? Anybody? Yeah, you're going to say yes. So more than likely correct. I mean, if it's not you, it's going to be your baby. So, no, not exactly, and, yeah. Interact with each other so crazy that I'll bet they fight every half hour with the next clan, and they get angry to your backyard and if your Shih Tzu. If you know what a Shih Tzu is, you know your wildlife really good. Yeah. So so need for wildlife control. So I mean that's also to me that's a bit hard to define. So I don't know what kind of goose has in mind. They don't make collars. Might as well burn the fur, I guess. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Is that no matter what, there will be bodies taken on the prairie. There is no other way. Whether it's very locally again, just very calling in the ministry or the state or statewide. Of course, the agreement on international humane trapping standard, that's also to bring at the exam. Humane trapping standard is something I want you to explore somewhere else. If you go down south and people have never heard of trapping, you want to say that it's humane trapping standard. Humane for a score, of course, basically humane is measured by the amount of sufferance of the animal, so minimal sufferance, and usually it goes by the pain. So it goes by screaming. Unfortunately, that's all we got to go by. The animal screams, it's in pain. So when you crush, next time you crush a salamander, if it doesn't scream, it wasn't in pain. That's how stupid this is. I can't help it. Catfish in your boat feel pain. Good luck with that definition. So, so humane for reducing the pain to a minimum. That means instant kill is the way to go. You remember, firearms is usually the best way with a skillful handler for sure. But still, in a hunting course, you will learn the vital parts that you don't want to shoot the animal in the backbone, for example, or too bad. All right. The trapping does the same thing. The trap has been tested. That's why it says standard. It has been tested repeatedly to see what is the exact size and strength of the trap that can kill the animal within 1 minute. So the animal is declared dead within 1 minute. So that's the rule. That has been cheated before that, like in a crazy pattern. So the old ways would be, I'm going to say pan trap, PAM, pan traps, and I don't need to show you what look like, but they 4-foot. Foot folder, the problem with it is the animal is conscious for days. If exposed to adverse conditions, you find it soaked. And unfortunately, sometimes you will find just a paw. The paw is let the animal just. We've seen that beautiful movie. Let's see what time it is. Oh, we got more time. 127 hours. We've seen that movie. Sick. You are a sick person. 127 hours. Some guy decides to do some rock. It's not a rock climbing. It's the opposite. They drop between the rocks for fun, free fall. When there was over something, the guy gets stuck for 7 hours. I think it's based on a true story. The guy has to yeah, you know that, and then sick. So yeah, leg hold traps were terrible for that. Lots of, I mean, can you imagine a journalist seeing that, bringing back to England? Country is going down. We're all going to jail for sure. So humane trapping standard. My buddy Gilbert Pua opened that for institute somewhere in the north, an enclosure, and it's all about testing every possible traps. They doubled the springs on them to make sure the kill was very efficient, yet preserving the fur, correct? So if it chops the fur is worth nothing. That's unacceptable. All right. And the word IUCN is right here. So that means that they adhere to those principles. This is the Fur Institute of Canada that is, I'm going to say, I would accept promote, but they're defending the fur industry. So I should highlight some of the important stuff right here. So widespread. So remember, abundance and extent are two different things, correct? Very important, very basic. So either the animals took on locally, but if it's also widespread, meaning it's everywhere we don't want it, therefore that could be a problem as well. So it is widespread. It is a least concerned species. You remember that category from the IUCN. So coyote populations are stable, except what I call local extinction. This is some of the basic ecological principles that population is not extremely uniform. You can have local extinction. One township doesn't see a given animal for 5 years. All the other townships, well, not this one for 5 years. That's called local extension. It happened. And that's just one scale where it happens. So it can be, you can reduce the numbers. Of course, what's that story in Bonus Point? What's that park in Vancouver? I'm sorry. Last time I went to Vancouver. Anybody?
Stanley Park?
Yeah. God, you understand. So the biologist was on the radio saying, yeah, we do have 7 coyotes. There's 2 adult females and this and that. So local extinction is that they have to solve that problem. People have been calling in every, twice a day saying, how can I move my stroller around when there's 2 dogs just waiting for me at the other end of the park? So coyote is a bit inquisitive if it's in bad shape, if it got into a fight, if it is sick, or if it's got some, for example, rabies. It's a real issue. Again, no matter what, I don't care. Canada Goose doesn't put fur on his coat, fur will be extirpated. I'd rather see it on the coat myself. That's just my opinion on it. The human coyote conflicts have been trending upward in both rural and urban. So that, of course, that's the issue. If there was no issue, we wouldn't be talking about this. And if they're on the rise, that means that there's still need for population control. There are opportunistic predators for sure. So there's plenty of work being done on coyotes in suburban areas that are around dumps and so on. And so this is the range. Population density is about, it ranges quite a bit between 0.01 and 2.3 animals per square kilometer, 1 by 1 kilometer, and you can get all the way to 2 animals per square kilometer. So that's quite a bit if it's widespread. So the provincial and territorial governments regulate the management. That means they monitor the numbers, harvest, and how the animals are taken, whether it's hunting or trapping. The keyword in the second line is sustainable resource management approach. That's the MSY again, the maximal sustainable yield. So sustainable resource management approach by the IUCN and the human standards, main trapping standards mentioned as well. They try to at least cover their butts by saying that at least if we're going to trade some fur, it's totally legal, and that's what that line is saying. Coyotes will continue to be hunted for social economic reasons as well as respond to human health. as in epidemiology is a lot, right? Rabies, for example, and safety. All issues to bring to the exam regarding the coyote. So it's not a simple story, but fairly straightforward. I'm going to stop right here for now. I know it's a little short. See you next time.
What? I